just stand there teasing me. Now it's time to show and prove.
Good afternoon and welcome to Rubbin Minds. My name is Isabella Adediji. Well, it's raining birthdays here on Rubbin Minds. A happy birthday to the host, Ebuka Obi Uchendu. And of course, in 2 days' time, on Tuesday, happy birthday in advance to the senior producer, Otumba Shehu Oluyemi. We pray that this new year will be full of God's blessings. Now, a lot has been happening over the past week. We have defections, of course, the ongoing conversation between the federal government and organized labor on the matter of the minimum wage. And we all shared in the horror looking at the ongoing rescue efforts at the secondary school that collapsed in Jos. Of course, there's still a lot of questions being asked by Nigerians as they continue to queue at petrol stations that, wait a minute, we've removed subsidy on fuel, on petroleum products. Why are we still seeing these queues linger? A lot to go through today on the show. Joining me is a media consultant and social entrepreneur, Funke Treasure Anike Ade. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Thank you very much, Isabella. Good to be here.
We're glad to have you. And we also have policy development and research experts in the person of Israel Fawale. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here again.
Okay, thank you for honoring our invitation. Now, when we think about Nigerian politics, a lot of people feel that a lot of the politicians move from party to party at their whim for personal interest. In other climes, you have ideologies that mark a party, and maybe we don't see as much cross-carpeting movement. So what do you make of former Senate President Anyim Pius Anyim, who has defected from the People's Democratic Party, that's PDP, to the ruling party, All Progressives Congress? Do you believe these kind of defections are based on ideologies or maybe personal interest? Because we can cite a number of politicians that have been in both parties, and is this something we should continue to expect? I'll start with you, Funke.
Well, let's backtrack a little. You see that this was not the case in the past. I mean, our political ancestors were never doing this. They stuck to one party. I talk about NCNC back in the days, Action Group and all of those things. They did what is known as coalitions, not outrightly leave their parties to another party. And I think it's a reflection of military's incursion into democratic governance, where you had former President Ibrahim Babangida being behind the setting up of NRC and SDP, and you see that what we have today continually evolved from these two parties. So you see, you've talked about ideologies. I've never seen where a conservative moved from to Labour, or Labour to Conservative in the UK, or a Democrat, an elected officer in the Democrats to the Republicans in the US, which is where we borrowed our presidential system of government. So you see that this is a Nigerian thing. It just tells you that there are no ideological differences in the parties, the main parties that we have today. We hope that maybe one day they'll all sit down and say, this defines PDP, this defines APC and the other parties, so that they stay in one place and grow there and swim or sink with it, as we see, particularly in the UK. I mean, they just had their elections, and the party that lost knew that, okay, we didn't do too well. You heard the Prime Minister, he didn't move to the other party. He just agreed and apologized to the nation. But here, I do not want to say maybe is where Bele face is, but we see that people just move based on, my friend is there now, so let me just go there and,
Israel, do you agree that it's politics of interest as opposed to politics of ideology?
Yeah, of course. I mean, she rightly said everything that as it pertains to that question. And of course, you could, years ago in the classic novel written by George Orwell, animal farm, yeah. And, all animals are equal, some are more equal than the other. So that happens when there is this person in government. Others also want to have government privileges. So because there are no ideologies, you see them, moving, to escape, EFCC, scrutiny and all of those things. So, I mean, lack of ideologies is obviously the primary issue where you see, politicians in Nigeria who are supposed to, form ideologies that actually makes our developmental processes. That is why they cross the carpet. So I mean,
you are saying it's to avoid the gaze of EFCC. Is it also to maybe remain relevant, or is it a case of, this party seems to be the one that everybody is supporting, so I better be on the winning team?
So for me, the last administration during the Muhammadu Buhari's tenure, you would see, once they will even tell you in the media, come to our party, then your punishments would be, will be lower. So for me, I think it is just a means for them to actually evade justice. Yeah, so that
is such a sorry thing to, take out of this, because accountability is such that if you erred, you should take the full punishment for whatever error or whatever it is that you did wrong. You cannot be milking the people and stealing from the people and think that if you ported to another party, a ruling party, then your sins will be forgiven. It just tells you that we're not there yet, and accountability should be a thing that we prioritize, in Nigeria. It's a sad commentary for people to think that if I ported or if I moved across capital, to use the right word, to another party, then there's a cloak on me and you can't touch this.
Now, speaking about accountability, it begs the question of people being held accountable, government agencies being held accountable, developers, the people who are issuing these permits, because over and over we see these buildings collapse, the buildings, and it was so horrific seeing, secondary school students who were still in session, speaking about the Saint Academy School building in Jos, Plateau State. And this occurred on Friday. And the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Ahmed Dangiwa, is saying that it's totally unacceptable. Whoever is responsible will feel the full weight of the law. But do you see any measures being taken? Because it's like every month there's one building collapse or the other. It's not just in Jos, it's in Lagos, it's in different parts of the country. And surely there are signs, there are these building distress where you begin to see cracks. Really, who should be facing the music and who should we be holding accountable? I'll start with you, Israel.
Okay, thank you so much. It is really unfortunate that, when we have issues like this, in Nigeria, our governments are more reactionary rather than being proactive. Yeah, when you want to build, you want to have a building. Yeah, there are due processes for you to go into. Yeah, so what happens to when buildings are going in, when the constructions are going on? Enforcement of relevant policies that have been in place to mitigate or prevent issues like this. In the case where the government are not proactive, we continue to have issues like this, and the only thing we'll have are excuses, bunch of excuses and reactionary comments like, we are sorry, we are sad, and which is really unfortunate that we lost 21 young pupils, in that school. So I would really say that, as much as the government really needs to be more proactive rather than being reactionary, also people living in the immediate environment have a role to play, and that boils down to accountability. It is not only the role of the government, but also the role of people who are living primarily in in such environment. A building wouldn't just collapse without showing some signs. So there must have been a bit of laxity. I'm sorry to say, but then there probably must have been a bit of laxity. People who are around, the cracks, just like Riley said, there must have been cracks, there must have been signs. So what were the measures that have been put in place when these things are? So I think that we really need to reorientate ourselves on, when you see this, how do you, react to it and all of those things. So we need to first also, as people within the community, start taking serious accountability steps so that, issues like this, accidents like this can be prevented.
Okay, Funke, I'd like to take this question from this angle, because you mentioned, what's obtainable in other climes. And in situations like this, usually the agency or the minister whose portfolio this falls under takes that sense of responsibility and says, look, it happened under my watch. I'm sorry, I'm not good enough. And they step down. Is that something we should expect? Is that the kind of accountability that when something goes wrong, let the person facing the music be the person at the top? In this case, the Minister of Housing and Urban Development?
Well, I don't think the minister should step down. I think well, he has made a statement, which is good. He's empathizing with what has happened. I mean, to be honest, it's a tragic development, but really, it can't take away the job of the governor. It's in the place of the governor to be accountable to the tragedy in his state. Having said that, this should be a wake-up call to other governors to look at the structural defects of buildings, not just in the state capitals, but in other, beyond the state capitals where they are. A friend was telling me about the former governor of Osun State, Governor Aregbesola back then, who took a proactive step. You were talking about reactionary and, reactions and responses. It took a, proactive step by checking buildings in the state capital, Osogbo, then to see that the buildings were all right. You also talked about agencies when you were framing the question. So I'm wondering, town planners and building associations and all these people, where are they? Do you mean that they pass by these roads and streets and then they see structures with defects and they just keep mum? Which reminds me of, again, what former governor of Kaduna State did when he was at the FCT, in charge of the FCT, how he was pulling down, structures at that time, not just because they were obstructing, they were not, adhering to the master plan, but some of them were not also, good structures. So governors should not wait till this kind of thing happens. I mean, look at Plateau State. It's not a place where we associate with building collapses like Lagos. Right. But look, it has happened and we've lost children. The thing is, what is the value of a Nigerian life? What will happen such that state governors will rise in unison to say, this must not happen again? We're not there yet.
A lot of people need to take responsibility, and perhaps maybe some heads need to roll.
It should. If
it's not the minister, if it's not the governor, then what about the heads of these agencies? It's not enough to have these statements, because what happens when the next building collapses? Okay, let's move to the appointments. There have been a lot of appointments over the past week. We had new leadership for PENCOM, we had for NAUDA, we had for CCT. I mean, I could go on and on, NHSA. When you see these appointments, and this is not the first time we're going to see a slurry of appointments by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Does this give you some kind of renewed hope? Does this instill some kind of confidence that once we have round pegs in round holes, then a huge part of the problem is solved? Or do you feel that maybe some of these appointments are a way to maybe pat people on the back and say, here's a reward for maybe good service over time? Funke?
Well, I know that every leader would want a team. Making appointments is one of those things. When you take over, you want your own people there so that they can give impetus to your vision. And after the appointments, we expect performance, which is what we're all expecting, whether you're using the old team or you're constituting your own team. What we need in Nigeria right now is performance. So if anybody is getting appointed to whichever agency or to become new minister in a new ministry and all of these appointments, what we want is performance. And I believe what the person who is making this appointment wants also are people who can translate his vision into measurable actions, and we can see results and develop as a nation. Outside that, change brings newness, change brings freshness, change brings, creates an atmosphere of let's do this, let's do this. It brings enthusiasm. And I hope that these people who've been appointed to these agencies will inject fresh ideas, will bring in freshness and newness. And at the end of the, administrations in these various agencies will be able to say, oh, this person contributed this to the development of Nigeria. That's what matters to me.
Israel, do you share in Funke's hope that...
Yeah, sure. I totally agree. Some days ago, Tony Onimelu was saying that he's not talented, but he brings people who are talented around him to be able to achieve the results he has today. So it is not about the appointment. I want to believe that Mr. President, before appointing these people, have checked their portfolio and they are worthy and suiting to that portfolio to be able to perform. So my advice is just, as a country, I mean, like I said the other time I was here, I was saying that you have no business in leadership or policy if you're not thinking development. So when you get there, it is not about you being there or carrying the title or being a positional leader. It's about you also going to look for the best hands that you can work with, understanding what has been happening, having a retrospective study, and also looking at, oh yes, and that is where, research comes in. It's very important. You must do research. You must take your time when you get to the office to understand what is the current situation of things. Where are we coming from? Then what is the renewed hope agenda? Then, merging all of these things, because knowledge drives action. If you don't have data about what has been happening, what's currently the state of things, and the future innovation we have, I mean, you most likely might fail. So it is very important that you bring first, you are knowledgeable about what you want to do, you take your time to do research, and you bring the best hand around you, to work with you. Then we'll be able to achieve beautiful results, and it will end up giving us beautiful democratic outcomes.
And speaking of renewed hope, I think something that marked this administration as such a bold and audacious step was the removal of subsidy on petroleum products. And yet we see that the price keeps going up. And just recently, it's been, a lot of chaos at the petrol stations. Queues have returned. And I don't know if you also echo the same sentiment by the National Association of Nigerian Students, that's NANS, who are saying that this removal of subsidy has led us into a crisis and they're not seeing the benefits, the promised benefits. Do you agree? Do you echo this same sentiment, Israel? Oh,
yes. I mean, it is visible to the blind and it is audible to the deaf that, Mr. President's coming and hitting the ground running was with the removal of fuel subsidy without a serious study, feasibility study. Oh, what is the situation of things? I mean, somebody who is just resuming office, whether you have been in the safe house for 3 months or 2 months, I mean, that is not enough for you to carry out, to have enough data to help you make informed decisions. Knowledge drives action. And that would make me start asking Mr. President, what made you? We should even be asking Mr. President, or if you think you mean well for us, what made you make this type of policy on your first day, in office? It is a very unfortunate policy, and I must say. And I feel that it is a major thing that has driven us into this problem, this hunger, this hardship, that we are in. Yeah, I totally agree with what the Nigerian students have said. And they are also echoing the voice of every Nigerian. We are all in pains. We are all, feeling the pain of the hardship. We are feeling the pain of, the queues at the filling station. It has not changed anything. Nothing has changed. No newness, no, how do I put it? Nothing really specifically has changed. So it is really sad and unfortunate that we have that to start. And of course, we don't know for how long, the effect of the removal of subsidy, without proper policies in place. We don't know how long the cascade, of the effects would cascade. So yeah, I totally agree with what the students have said.
What about you, Funke? Do Nigerians need to just exercise a bit more patience to see maybe these promised benefits of this subsidy removal, or do you also echo the same sentiment?
Yes, I do. I mean, I do not blame Nance, for making that statement. It's been quite difficult for households and families to survive in the last 1 year. And I am saying this with caution also, knowing that I mean, I do not expect this administration to do in 1 year what has gone wrong for like 8-10 years. And so wanting to right the wrongs of the past and wanting to put us on the right policy a pathway to becoming healthy again as a nation, both economically and otherwise, is good. But I think what this administration needs to do more is to find ways to explain what's going on. Don't just expect us to understand what you're doing. I mean, this is beyond regular economics, you know. So you need to get platforms to continually explain to Nigerians what you're doing and for how long we have to endure this hardship and where we're going. You floated the Naira, and then afterwards, what do we begin to expect? When do we get respite? Because truly, there is hunger in the land. People are hungry. The prices of things have not just doubled or tripled, they've quadrupled in many places. So it is difficult. Rent is something else now. And so you do not see the commensurate increase in the take home of people. So people are groaning, and it's not as if the fuel is, we're happy with it. So please explain more. We understand that we have to, sacrifice for our nation, but you see, in the bid to sacrifice, you don't want us to die, right?
Yeah. and I think maybe that's why this issue of the minimum wage is so important now, because the purchasing power of 30,000 this year is not the same as 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And organized labor is still standing on 250,000, which has come down from about 600 and something thousand. But it seems to be there's this impasse, like no headway is being made. Israel, what are your thoughts on this minimum wage? Is that the solution to give people more money, or maybe to start looking at how to combat inflation, which I would say the removal of fuel subsidy has really contributed to the huge increase in the price of food and, like you said, rent and, all sorts of basic amenities?
So for me, it's a very slippery slope. When you talk about implementation of the new minimum wage, then what amount would actually be enough? I mean, look at what happened, for example, in Uganda. Some years ago, they said they were in the same crisis and they just increased minimum wage, and they had serious inflation problem. So I would say that yes, it is very, very important. This is what I feel the president should have done first, honestly speaking, before removing the fuel subsidy. Let us review our minimum wage. Let us check what, and that is why, see, when you come and you don't have data, you don't make enough researches for you to have enough knowledge to drive your decisions, the policy you are making, you are bound to actually have this kind of policy somersault that you're having, because I'll call it a policy somersault. So I feel that, yes, why this conversation is going, I feel it is when you are putting the, how do you say this in Yoruba?
The cart before the horse?
Yes,
or the
this
horse
should have
before?
come first, before first subsidy removal, because I mean, before this time there has been serious inflation. You see, the Naira to dollar exchange has been on the high rise, and people are really grounding and all of those things. So ignoring all of those things and removing first subsidy was a no-no. This conversation should have been held years back or months back before this is happening. So we hope, something good will come out of it. But even at that, even when you increase the earning power, the buying power is as high as. So how to really balance
What about, like in 30 seconds or less, I'd like you to just weigh in on that, Funke.
Well, I think Labour is conflating minimum wage with monthly salary. Because I don't understand how you will make 250,000 naira the minimum wage. You mean you're expecting people in the lower cadre to earn that? So what will mid-income people earn, and what will people higher than that earn? For those of us in the private sector who have employees, are you telling me that as a social entrepreneur, the lowest I should give a staff is 250K? That's minimum wage. That's not the monthly salary. So this is where am I going to get that? Where will the private sector get that? So labor needs to, and just as he said, you're courting inflation. it's just not going to work. So let us stop conflating monthly salary with minimum wage. Minimum wage this is the minimum, and you can have all kinds of allowances on top of it that will make up your monthly salary. I think that's where Labour is getting it wrongly.
Thank you very much, Funke Treasurer Anike Ade, and thank you, Israel Fowley, for your contributions on Rubbin Minds.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really wanna get with you. Don't just stand there teasing